For Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and you're listening to this podcast, which is a part of the Inside Carolina Podcast Network. So, first off, thank you for being here. If you haven't already, subscribe to Inside Carolina. Go ahead and do that right now, wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube, so you never miss any of the content our team at IC puts out. It hardly takes any time, and it helps us out a lot. Also, speaking of support, we want to support the people that support us. So, that's why on this podcast, I have to remind everybody about Jimmy's Famous Seafood. The reason they wanted to sponsor this podcast is simple. They're owned by UNC fans. With the pandemic and indoor dining restricted, it's a tough time right now to be a locally owned business. So it's helping out one of our own. And at the same time, you get ridiculously good seafood at a great price. It's a true win-win for everybody involved. And for everybody wondering, my go-to order is the famous gift box where you get two massive crab cakes, two different kinds of crab soup, and then a half pint of crab dip. Visit them online at jimmysfamousseafood.com. And at checkout, use the code hashtag GDTBATH for free 2-day shipping. That's promo code hashtag GDTBATH. All right, let's get to it. As always, I'm joined by my guy and Carolina basketball legend, Justin Jackson. Justin, Carolina, no words for it. They're coming off their worst loss of the season, scoring a season low 50 points. They lost by a season high 13 points, tied the Iowa margin of defeat. But what were your general takeaways after watching this game for Carolina?
Um, I think the biggest problem was just we couldn't score. I mean, 50 points in a whole game. That's tough. I think a lot of it is, people are starting to play our secondary break and stuff like that. So it's, finding other ways to score. But yesterday they just couldn't find that thing that was working. So I think that was really the thing that stood out to me. So hopefully they can find different ways to get different people involved and stuff like that.
Yeah, this was kind of going back to the point that I was making last week where this team isn't, you know, as good as some of the I'm not Butler, Gonzaga or Baylor's of the college basketball world, but they're not as bad as some people were kind of making them out to be in the early part of the season, and they're somewhere in between that middle ground. But I thought the biggest problem for Carolina last week is we've talked the past 3 weeks or however long it's been about how good Armando Bacot has been for Carolina, how he was their most consistent player. And Armando, he goes 0 for 1 from the field, one shot attempt in 19 minutes. How does something like that happen? And what did Clemson do so effectively to take Bacot completely out of this game?
Yeah, well, I think there was a few things. I mean, like I said, teams in the ACC, once it starts up, they start to kind of, you know, in practice and stuff, they get ready for kind of the plays that Carolina runs. And there was a play in particular that stood out was we were running secondary break, and they threw it back to the big man at the top of the key. And the big that was guarding the trail big was literally at the charge circle. So that shuts down all options of trying to throw it inside or trying to get Armando or G or even Dayron. Like that cancels out all of those actions. So I think part of it is the fact that Clemson had a good scout coming into the game. Another is just the fact that you know we have to have other ways to score outside of maybe an Armando or outside of a Garrison or whoever it is, Dayron, who might be very dominant inside. We have to have other ways to score, and I think we talked about this before, to try to open it up for them inside. Because if you just allow the bigs or whoever just to collapse in on on Armando or G or whoever, that can kind of, that takes them out of the offense completely. So they just got to find different ways to get other people involved, I feel like.
Clemson defensively as a whole, they did a great job. They limited Carolina's starting five to 30 points. It's the first time no starter scored in double figures for UNC since the Rutgers game back in 2010. Royce said they had a great week of practice leading up to the game, but how much do you think Carolina was hurt by not playing this weekend? Because it is something that is hard to replicate, those live game reps.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously nothing gets you ready for a game than playing in a game. So that is tough. But I think it's more than just it's more than just getting game reps up. At the end of the day, it's Carolina is who Carolina is. So like the plays that coach runs are some of the same plays that we ran when we were there. And so it's not like one of those teams that it might change from game to game. Like coach might throw in a play every once in a while, but like the plays that are the plays that you're going to run each and every game. So like there should be no change in, okay, you know what, we're trying to get Armando involved. If Armando is, maybe they're trying to shut him off, then we've got whoever else we can go to, So it's like that's what they've got to find is those different levels of guys that they can get involved and get, into different actions and stuff, because you can't just rely on a few people, because once you get into, like I said, once you get into the ACC, it's way different than playing in the non-conference when teams who don't see you on a regular basis are trying to figure out what your offense is. Like these teams know your offense. And so it's a matter of within that offense, finding different guys that you can go to get scoring.
Carolina had a season low 72 possessions against Clemson, and they had 17 turnovers, so they turned it over on nearly 1 out of every 4 possessions. You're not going to win too many games doing that. When a team is going to slow the pace and try to grind out a win like Clemson is going to do, how much more of an importance does that put on not turning the ball over and being smart with the ball when Carolina gifts Clemson 13 points off turnovers right off the bat?
Yeah, I mean it's every possession matters even more, and I think too, even with that, like Clemson wanted to slow it down, but that means as North Carolina, like each and every time you have an advantage, you have to try to take advantage of it. And so even if it's, maybe you've got 7 fast breaks in the whole game, you've got to try to take advantage of that, because that's, at the end of the day, we've talked about, that's what Carolina is, like transition, offensive rebounding. Like that's what like everything is built on at Carolina. So it's a matter of you got to get stops, you got to take care of the ball, and then try to push. Because if a team is trying to trying to be slow and trying to be methodical, like I always think back to like a Virginia, right? Like Virginia is always going to try to just play in the half court, use up the whole shot clock. Like so when you have the opportunity to push back against them, they don't want to necessarily play fast. So that's whenever you can take advantage of those times. So, I don't know. I mean, I think last night was maybe it was a tough game from a lot of different standpoints. Like you said, you definitely can't turn the ball over that much. And I know coaches probably going crazy over the turnovers. But it's just a matter of taking care of the ball and finding those ways of getting different people involved. Like they've got to try to find that.
Yeah, I was laughing because in the press conference, one of the reporters was like, "Roy didn't seem that mad tonight. Like, what did you guys see from him?" And I think it was either Garrison or Dayron started kind of laughing because Roy probably got into them after that game with how careless they were with the ball at times. And you don't want to take anything away from Clemson because this was a team who just a couple short weeks ago, they were a top 15 team, but does it hurt more to lose when you did commit so many unforced errors and you lose the turnover battle so drastically 17-7?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, it's tough to look at. You have some games where it's just like, man, things just aren't going right for us. Um, but as I watched them, it was almost like there just was never a time when it was like, okay, we're making a push. You know what I mean? Like there was never really a time when it was like North Carolina's in control. So it was like those 17 turnovers. It wasn't as if it was like in a span of a little time and then they kind of regrouped and got it going again. Like it was kind of throughout the game. And so whenever there's really never a time when you take advantage of the game and you take control of it and you're always trying to come from behind, like there's going to be bad mistakes. There's going to be bad turnovers because you're trying to press and all that sort of stuff. So, playing from behind is tough, especially when you're having a night where you can't really score, because then you just put so much more pressure on yourself. So, hopefully they can, kind of regroup and, at the end of the day, it is one game out of, a long ACC schedule. So hopefully they can kind of regroup and figure it out.
Yeah, Carolina went up 2-0. That was their only lead of the game. They led for 16 seconds, I think I saw. And then Clemson just had them on the ropes, kind of like you were mentioning, for the rest of the game. And after games like that, when you do beat yourself, is it difficult getting through the film sessions at Carolina? What's the watching film like with the coaches the next day or in the days to come?
It can be interesting. It just kind of depends on, uh, how badly you played. Like if you have 17 turnovers in a game, that film session is probably going to be pretty long. If you don't play the way that, you're very capable of playing, I think that it's going to be pretty long. And there's going to be um, definitely a lot of, we'll say, teaching going on in the film session. So I'm sure today, if not today, tomorrow, especially coming up, into this big game on Saturday, I think they're definitely going to have a good amount of film.
Football, I remember if I knew I missed the block or something bad was coming up on film, I'd be like, "Hey, can I go to the bathroom real quick? Try to get out of the room." Does that ever happen in basketball when a bad play's coming? Like, hey, is it possible I could leave the room for a quick second?
You know what? I'm sure guys have tried that, but I think a lot of times whenever you're in film with coach and some of the coaches, like you're just so, I wouldn't say nervous, but it's like you're so uptight about what you're going to see because it's so bad that it's like you don't even want to try to get out of it, because if you get out of it, you're going to see it at some point. So you might as well just sit there and endure whatever they're about to say about it.
This was a team that had been taking small positive steps forward, and Tuesday night it seemed to be a pretty big step back. How did you regain your confidence after difficult losses and just basically wipe that out of your memory because, like you mentioned, the season is so long?
I mean, it's just a matter of, every day, okay, you know what, we lost this. Let's try to figure out what we did wrong or whatever, and let's keep on trying to get better. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily, you know, if it was the turnovers or if it was, guys just weren't able to score the ball or we didn't shoot it well or whatever. It's like, okay, you know what, we're not going to necessarily change our routine. And I think for me personally, that was one of the things that I stuck to, was I always had the same routine, whether we lost to a team, be a team by 20, whatever it was. Like I had the same routine. That way there was some sort of like normalcy to my work, So it was like, it wasn't, if we lost, it wasn't like I went in and shot 1,000 jump shots or, I did, I lifted for 2 hours. It was the same exact routine. That way, each and every game, like we talked about before, was kind of the same. Whether you win or you lose, you go right back in and you try to figure out what you can do better, and you keep on chipping away at that. So, obviously, like you said, that was a tough loss. It is a long season, and so it's just a matter of them finding what it is that they need to do better as a team, and continuing to just try to get better, and if they do that, I think they'll be able to get right back and start building that momentum again, hopefully for, the rest of the season.
Outside of the turnovers, Carolina shot 11 of 21 from the free throw line. Day'Ron Sharpe, in particular, really struggled from the line. He was 4 of 10, and that includes him making his last 3. So at one point, he was 1 of 7. What does Carolina do for somebody who is struggling from the free throw line? Because you guys obviously aren't going up there trying to miss, and you are working on these things in practice. So how does the coaching staff and how does the team kind of handle free throw shooting?
Honestly, free throw shooting, free throw shooting is a tough thing because in practice, there's a way different feel than once you step up to the line in a game. You can't really replicate those different feelings that you have. But with something like that, it's just a matter of just reps, So once you get that muscle memory, even though it is a different feel when you step up to the line in a game, like you've already shot so many times that it's like you can just step up there and shoot as normal as you have. And you still might miss, like Day'Ron, obviously he struggles at the free throw line, but even with that, it's like the more and more reps that he gets, just the more comfortable he gets at the free throw line, So as long as he gets more comfortable at the free throw line, like I said, he still might miss free throws, but he just has to have a comfortability where he can step up there and not be second guessing, like, dang, like, I got to make this, or I just missed 3 in a row. It's like, no, I'm going to step up here and I'm going to shoot free throws because I've worked on this a lot. And so I think it's just a matter of just getting the reps up. If they can do that, if he can do that, whoever it is that's struggling at the free throw line, just keep on getting reps. And I think they'll be all right.
Building off that point, with somebody like Sharpe, who is shooting just above 50% from the free throw line, is it a case with guys like that they start pressing when they miss one and then it kind of just snowballs away from you?
Yeah, I mean, well, you can see it just in how he reacts. Whenever he misses a free throw, like if he misses a free throw, it's like it's like the end of the world almost. When really it's like, yeah, free throws are very important, but it's like, no, like stay on the line and let's make the second one. Like let's not compound that first miss with another miss. And then another miss. So it's like, it's just a matter of, like I said, with that confidence, like when you miss a free throw, you're not going to necessarily freak out over missing it because okay, this next one I'm gonna put it in. Like, or I've shot these so many times, like I know what I need to fix on this next shot, and I'm gonna do that. And so I think it's just a matter, like I said, it's just him getting up there and feeling good at the line and not feeling like, oh, I gotta make a free throw or else, I'm 1 for 8. It's like, no, like let's just step up, let's shoot the free throw. Like we know how we can shoot it. If you miss it, you miss it. If you make it, you make it. So he just gotta try to find whatever it is in him mentally, like just to sit up there and be okay with how he shoots free throws.
Next up on the schedule, UNC heads to Durham on Saturday to take on Duke. It's the first time both teams won't be ranked since 1960 when Dwight D. Eisenhower was the president and Roy Williams was just 9 years old, for some context. Does that fact that both of these teams aren't ranked, coming off bad losses in a year where there's no fans, kind of take some of the luster away from this game for you?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I think it'll take maybe for them being there and not seeing those fans in the arena when you go in. It'll probably take a little bit from it. But I mean, the hard thing is like you turn on the TV leading up to this game, and that's all people talk about, right? And it might be a little different because they're both not necessarily ranked or they're not, highly touted teams right now. But just because it's Duke in North Carolina, it's going to be everywhere, So you're going to see that, you're going to get hype over that, and then once game day starts, just by going into Duke and playing in that arena has a different feel. And so for me, being on the outside, I'll definitely, I've played with a few Duke guys, so I'm definitely going to up the ante a little bit this year. But I don't think it changes it at all. I think it's still the best rivalry in sports, so you can't take that away from it.
That was going to be one of my questions I was going to ask you. Where in the NBA, Sacramento, you played with Marcus Bagley, you played with Harry Giles. In Dallas, you played with Seth Curry. Take us into the locker room. Are you guys betting on the games? How much trash talk is involved? What can you disclose with us?
Well, okay, so we're not supposed to bet. So betting is not it's not a deal. But I mean, there's definitely a lot of trash talking. There's definitely a lot of you know, I'll just say trash talking. And it definitely you go back to you start talking about games that you had against Duke and them against North Carolina and stuff. So the rivalry is definitely still alive, and I still have those guys' numbers, and so we'll definitely get it popping a little bit.
You've lived the rivalry in your career against Duke. You were only 2-5, but you do have the national championship to kind of hold over people's head. What is your favorite Duke UNC memory?
Favorite Duke UNC memory? Probably the game that we won to, was it to win the ACC regular season or to tie for the regular season ACC? Marcus hit, I think, 2 free throws to seal the game at Duke. That was
Yeah.
my sophomore year, I think.
Yep, that sounds right.
And so that was probably the best one. But I mean, like you said, I didn't have a ton of success against Duke. We kind of struggled while I was at school against them. They had some really good teams, but that was probably the number one memory from that rivalry.
Yeah, from your time at Carolina, like I mentioned, you were 2-5. I think when I was at Carolina, it was even worse. I think those 2 wins were the only 2 wins I saw. To make it even worse, I remember being on my official visit was a Duke UNC game, and it was the Austin Rivers game. So right off the bat, like
That's
I
tough.
didn't have the best start when it comes to the Duke UNC rivalry, but over the past couple of years, I feel like it's been kind of changing. Maybe since that Zion shoe game where the shoe exploded and Carolina was able to take some momentum back. But it's obviously going to be different this week with no fans. But in a normal year, how would you put into words what it's like playing in Cameron Indoor in this rivalry?
There's literally nothing like it. A lot of people say it's the best rivalry in sports. It's the craziest game. But like once you're in it, like it's a totally different feel. Like we talked about previously, like trying to look at each and every game as like just another game. But that one, it's impossible. It's like I said before, like you turn on ESPN or you're just watching something else and a commercial is going to pop up talking about that game. Like you can't get away from it. And then like leading up to it, obviously the coaches have a little bit more energy to them. And then you get to the game time and it's like you run into that. I mean, it's the size of a high school gym, like it's not a big arena at all. So you run in there and it's like the feel of being in there, like Duke has so much history, and then obviously the Dean Dome has so much history. And so it's like just all of that combined, it creates like your adrenaline is going more than probably any game that you'll ever really have. So, it's a once in a lifetime feeling. And so I hope these guys take that serious and they go in there and try to beat them for sure.
Both teams are right on the bubble. I think Carolina's 6-4 in conference play. Duke is, I think, 5-4 in conference play. Both are on the bubble for the NCAA tournament, either on the bubble or on the outside looking in. How big of a win would this be for either team for their tournament aspirations, their postseason hopes, where a win here could get your season back on the right track and the loser on Selection Sunday could be on the outside looking in?
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that they've played. So you said they're 6-5, so they've played 11 ACC games already. Now it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, we got to really, we got to take these games, very serious. And so I think, even though they're both not ranked, like a game of like this magnitude from the standpoint like Duke, North Carolina, like it goes on the resume, so whoever wins, like they have on there, we beat Duke or we beat North Carolina. And so I think that's, that they've got to take it serious. If their main goal is to make it to the tournament and try to make a run, each and every game from now on is very important, starting with this Duke game. And so, hopefully they take that serious and hopefully they kind of get it going.
Huge game on Saturday. We'll have that game to talk about. We'll also have the Miami game to talk about. I think you're playing the same day as the Duke UNC game. I think you guys have a home game against the Timberwolves. So is it going to be something where you're checking your phone before the game, trying to find out the scores, or what's your plans for kind of this when you have a game the same day as a UNC Duke
Well,
game?
I'll definitely have my people giving me updates. We'll definitely be getting the updates. Obviously, my game is the most important one, but we got to have updates every once in a while. So I'll definitely have my people checking into it.
All right, Justin, that's all I got for you this week. Good talking to you and looking forward to catching up
I
next week.
appreciate it, man.